Chuck Champion, from the Signal president and publisher. Let's give him a big hand. Good to see you, Chuck.
Well, thanks very much, Alan. Well, I had the pleasure to meet our previous speaker about 3.5 months ago when he first started. And if you've been following the newspaper or other media outlets in the city, we all have to be delighted as Santa Claritans for the work that they're doing. Our department has become more proactive. They are getting more of the criminals off the streets. I couldn't praise Rob more for the work that he's initiated and some of the strategies that we're learning about that he's deploying. In fact, he said to me the same thing he said to you, is before we go any further, know I'm a lawman. This is what I love, this is what I do, and this is who I am. So to a fellow New Jerseyan, yeah, my compliments and the paper's compliments to the work that you're doing, and it's so critically important. So, thank you. I do. And the interesting thing is when he told me that, it resonated with me because Rob and I have a few things in common, not just that we were born in the Garden State, and not that we have daughters. I have 6. He has 3. He is younger and better looking than I am. I give him that, but I do have more daughters than he does. But we also take what we do very seriously. And I have no teleprompter. My remarks are going to be off the cuff and from the heart, because I think that's what this community deserves. They don't deserve me standing up here and giving you some canned presentation and speech, to make you go out and want to use my product more or subscribe or whatever, because I know that many of you in this room are subscribers. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and my partners, because, we are, one of my partners you're probably very familiar with because he's been out here for 35 years. The other 2 of us are not. And so I want to tell you a little bit about who we are and frankly, why we purchased the Signal and what we're hoping to try to do over the next little while. And then take your comments and your questions about how we're doing and what we might be able to do better. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. I was born in New Jersey, but I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and I became familiar with the Santa Clarita Valley when I was young, in the mid-1960s, when I came out and shot tin cans in Texas Canyon, which I think was legal at the time, but I think, I don't think that's a crime I can be charged with now. At least I hope so. This would be very embarrassing if I was taken out in handcuffs. And then later, when I started my newspaper career in 1973 for the Valley News and Green Sheet at the young age of 19, I drove a truck and dropped off newspapers out here to people who then would distribute them to homes. And at the time, you might remember, we distributed to everybody. So there was quite a few newspapers that we brought out here, but not nearly as many as we would need today. I remember the community then. I didn't quite think of it as Mayberry, but I did think of it as a nice, quaint, and kind of not isolated, more secluded from the San Fernando Valley. It was clearly different, it felt different, it looked different, and it was different. But all the people I met out there seemed more Midwestern to me. The people I ran into, whether they were in the restaurants that I ate at or the gas stations I stopped at or whatever, it just seemed that the community out here was a little more warm and inviting than the one that I was growing up in. And certainly I can say that today, having been in Chicago and Philadelphia and run newspapers in those towns and Boston. We do have a special community out here, and it's full of very warm and inviting people. And we've got a few guys, a few knuckleheads, but not as many as a lot of communities have. So growing up, I stayed in the newspaper business all the way through 1998. And as I mentioned, I worked principally at major metropolitan newspapers. The Valley News became the Daily News, and then I moved to the Orange County Register, and then I moved to Chicago, and I ran the Chicago Sun-Times, and then the Philadelphia Inquirer, a large part of that. And in 1998, I realized that the newspaper industry was really changing. Well, the environment around newspapers were changing, but the newspapers weren't changing. So I decided to get out of that and got into e-commerce and digital, and did a number of things, and then I am now back here in the newspaper business. One of my other partners is a guy named Gary Spruill, and Gary's background is not in newspapers, it's petrochemicals. He ran Unical, the retail products division, so all the gas stations that had 76 and the nice orange ball were the things that Gary did. And he's a finance guy and worked for Disney Interactive and has a lot of other experience. And he and I started an investment and management firm about 10 years ago and have been together ever since. Actually, we've been together since 2002, so almost 15 years. Russ Briley, who is the individual who's been out here, and some of you know, most of you know, for 35 years, has lived in Castaic. He was once the publisher of the newspaper, and he had had bouts on and off. And in fact, I hired Russ into the newspaper business in 1978. And so that's how I knew Russ, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. We were doing a reunion, to make a long story a little longer, at the Daily News, and we ended up saying, hey, look, let's get together and have lunch. We hadn't seen each other in, like I said, 35 years. Let's get together and we'll tell stories. Because if you tell stories, you're going to remember people faster. All the crazy, whacked out stuff we did, we'll remember, because we'll remember who was there. And sure enough, we got a great list of people. And at the end, Russ asked me what he thought about buying a newspaper. He said, it's very difficult. Just absolutely a very difficult business to be in today. Why are you asking? And he said, because I have the opportunity to buy the Signal. They've sold the building, sold it for a lot more than they'd hoped to sell it for, and they've decided that they no longer want to be in Santa Clarita. As many of you know, the newspaper's changed hands many times in its nearly 100-year history. Mostly families and individuals owned it out here until the late 1960s, and Morris Multimedia, I think it was called, bought the paper and owned it for 36 years and managed it from Georgia. So this would be the first time that local or quasi-local newspaper men would own the paper. In fact, it's interesting, when we bought the newspaper, we were congratulated, and finally the newspapers returned to local hands. That continued until I started to say some things about some local people, and then all of a sudden I'm an outsider and a carpetbagger. So interesting that, you know, as long as I agreed I was one of you, and when I started disagreeing with you, now all of a sudden because I live in Ventura County, and that's one of the things that is different between Rob and I. I could see the pride in his eyes and how, you know, he loved raising his hand and said 50 years. I wish I could do that. I'll never be able to do that because I'm not going to live to 113 even if I moved here tomorrow. So, but I want to let you know, just because I don't reside here, I do care deeply about the community. I drive 45 minutes to get here every day. I spend 12 hours a day, often 6 days a week. Here, I try to buy everything I can here to support the community and to support the people who support us. And we're very grateful for that. We bought the newspaper, and we say it often internally. We bought the newspaper to make a difference. We hope to be able to develop plans and programs and products here that we can share with other publishers across the country or other newspapers that we purchase. And in that, we believe that we might be able to make money. But both Gary and I and Russ have made money over the years, and that's not the principal reason. And we often say it. If it's about $1 or if it's about a difference, we'll go for the difference. At 63 years old, it's no longer about what cars I drive and what houses I live in or what my bank account looks like. It's about, the end of the day, leaving something that my kids can be more proud of than just those things. And it drives me. And it drives us, Gary and Russ, as well. So what we've done since we've been here is we've done a couple of things. We've made a lot of changes internally to the staff, and we've tried to upgrade the news gathering organization and the reporting that we do. And in fact, it's the only department in the company where we've actually added people and additional assets. The rest of the company, we've had to basically do what many newspapers across the country has, and that's reduce staff and make changes and ask people to do more work and work harder. And they are. We now have, admittedly, some of them are young, but that's always been the case with the Signal. We've always had a young staff. for the most part, or an inexperienced staff who haven't lived here. But they're learning quickly. We've got a couple of brand new, young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed reporters out there who just recently graduated from colleges, and they were their executive editors at those. So they were student newspaper editors before they became our reporters. We, of course, retained Jim, who knows a lot about the city, and promoted one of our editors to be the deputy editor, which is Jana Atkins. And she's doing a terrific job in getting the newspaper out every day. We added USA Today and got rid of AP. AP was Associated Press. It was stuff that you guys would read about on the nightly news or see on the nightly news, or potentially read in another newspaper like the LA Times or the Daily News. It wasn't bringing tremendous value. So what we did is we took the money we were spending on AP and invested it in USA Today, the little tab that would give you some, and they do it in a unique way. And then we loaded up more local stories. If you go in and look at the Signal today, there's nearly 50% more local news than there was when we took it over nearly 18 months ago. And we've committed more pages to that. We've also gone out and attempted to do a better job in talking with local politicians and local people about what their views are, their thoughts are, and bring them in and have conversations so we could do a better job in telling you what we're hearing. The commitment we make is that if we're going to endorse for a race, we need to know the person, the people, as many of them as we can, that are running for these offices. And then to take the facts that we've learned that you may not have had a chance to gain and to share them with you and tell you what we think is important and why we think it's important so you can judge our work. So you can look and say, well, you know, that's kind of ridiculous. That's not important. I don't care. Don't make a big deal of that. I don't care. Or say, you know what? That's really important and very insightful, and it helps me make a decision. We don't want to tell you who to vote for. We don't want to be the kingmakers. I don't care who sits in the throne. I want to have the freedom and the ability to question what they do when they sit in that throne, so I can't be too actively involved in picking the person. I have been asked on numerous occasions since I've been here to write personal letters of endorsement for jobs in the city and for appointed positions, and have refused because it takes me out of a position where I can criticize that individual or that individual's work. If I endorse, it's an entirely different process because it's the editorial board that does that. What you can expect from us, hopefully, over the next number of months or years, is that we are going to go after stories in this city that need to be reported. Some of you in this room may disagree with me, and that's okay. And if you do, there's a microphone. You can tell me why. I believe we live in two cities. I believe this is a tale of two cities. There's 200 and some odd thousand people out there that are busting their tails every day, every week to make a living and pay their bills and do everything. And they're hoping a couple hundred other people take care of everything else. And those couple hundred other people are on boards and are working at 501c3s, and some of them are doing just fabulous work. And I just call out two of them, for example. Wayne Crawford at the Boys and Girls Club, Richard Sandus at the Boys and Girls Club are giving money and giving time and helping to try to help the youth that live here in Santa Clarita. And there's 100 other examples of that, of all the great 501c3s. But frankly, ladies and gentlemen, it's a lot of them are all the same people, and they're starting to get older and they're starting to get tired. And some of them remember this town when there was only 50,000 people in it, or 30,000 people in it, or some coming later, it's 125 or 130,000. And our problems now have changed, and the solutions are not the same. Now, some of these people don't like the fact that the newspaper now is wide awake and is asking those questions, and they're getting mad. Some are even getting personal about it. But my view of that is much like Margaret Thatcher. She said, when attacks become personal, I love it, because it means my opponents have no more legitimate arguments to make. So we are getting more aggressive, because for 36 years, they chose to do it a different way. They did not want to disrupt what was going on. Well, I'm not into disrupting the process, nor is the newspaper interested in doing that. but we are interested in getting the stories, telling the stories, and giving full access to our entire community, not to a select few. Too long, too often, the microphone has only gone to a select few, and a lot of other people haven't been able to get to it, and they've got great ideas. The other thing that, we have, and you've heard it, we think law enforcement is doing a great job. Doesn't mean they won't make mistakes and we won't report on them. We will. But we think they're doing a great job. We think the city is well managed under Mr. Strickland, and he's done a lot of jobs. Has he had problems? Yeah, a year ago or so, we had a guy who was a crook and he stole from us, and they arrested him, got the money. They didn't lose any money or anything else. They handled it really, really well. He recommitted himself. They made some changes, maybe not as many as a lot of people would like to see, but we think it's well managed. But it doesn't mean it's perfect, so we need to stay after it. And then we think there's you've read some of you have read some of the letters I've written in the paper, or some of the editorials that I've penned. Most of what I do now, I'm trying to put my name on so there's no confusion as to who put it together. It was either, our editorial board, which is more than myself, or me as the publisher, saying that some of this stuff has gone on for far too long, and it needs to stop. People anointing others into jobs is just not appropriate, in our opinion. Now, the public has to ultimately decide whether that's okay or not. It's not for me to tell you what you should think and how you should run it. I see it as our place to help that process, but trust me, after we get done bringing all this stuff out, and more of it is to come, you'll have to make a decision on some of these folks as to what behaviors they're engaged in and whether or not that's going to be acceptable to you or not. Whether or not you want that kind of government here, because we have more serious problems, and we can't ignore them. Drugs are a bigger problem. Deaths on our streets are a bigger problem. We've got to take more aggressive actions. People are doing things out here they shouldn't be doing, and some of them are strangers, some of them have come in here, but frankly, some people have grown up here and have gotten on the wrong road. And we've got to, in my mind, collectively, the community, law enforcement, the city, and media need to do a better job in doing that. We're committed. We've invested in the newspaper a significant amount of money. Since I've been here, we've done nothing but invest. We have not taken anything out, and the reason I think that's important for you to know is that's a commitment. Wherever the hell I live, that's a commitment. And I want to let you know that. But I also know we're not doing everything right. I think we can do some things better. We've made some silly mistakes. One of them I'll call out immediately. The Hobby Lobby story of a couple weeks ago was not right. This individual did something, had nothing to do with his employer, and I came in and the employer's name is in the paper. Not appropriate. And everybody in the paper agrees. You know what? That's the way we used to do it. That's not the way we can do it going forward. So there's a few things that I think that we can do a better job about. We've written front page stories where we've apologized for not covering it properly, and that's what you can also expect from us. If we goof up and we do something wrong, we'll call ourselves out. If we don't catch it ourselves, if it's brought to our attention by you, then we'll do our best to make sure that we take care of it. This is one of the first organizations that I was made aware of when I arrived here, when Russ Briley took me around and I was literally fed information from a fire hose. Oh, we have the Hart School District, and then we have the Newhall School District, and we have this school district and that school district. I'm like, wait a minute, I came in the Los Angeles Unified School District. They're all together. What are you talking about? High school districts, junior high schools, or with how does all that work, and blah, blah, blah. And then I learned about the water and all those. And then I learned about, and then they said, and then when the county started getting, we had a bunch of these, advisory committees because the county and the supervisor wanted to get input from them. And the one that's probably the longest and the most active, there's one in Castaic, and I knew where that was, and they said there's one in Canyon Country, the Canyon Country Advisory. And I learned more about it. And I'm not saying this because you're all here. You can go back to the office and ask. I think this is one of the most important things that can go on in a community, where people come out like you come out and give of your time and question the people who come here, who want to understand in depth what the issues are so you can make intelligent decisions and not be apathetic and stay home and let somebody else do it for you. So I applaud you, laud you, and if there's anything, and Alan knows this, anything I can do to help promote what it is that you do, we at the newspaper would like to do that. So I've probably gone over my time. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows, right?